Hi everyone and welcome back. Today is a video I'm so excited to film because I am going to be talking about my reading experience so far this year and talking about the goals that I set myself back in January. I've read 36 books so far this year. One of them has been an audiobook. It's just been a late edition that snuck in at the beginning of July. I'm not sure how many of them have been a Kindle book, but a couple of them would have been, or more than a couple would have been Kindle books, just because they have been ARCs from NetGalley and the rest have all been physical copies. My average rating for books seems to be 3.3, which I find interesting because I always feel like I'm really generous with my ratings. Not because I want to be, I just feel like I, for some reason, just am always really generous with ratings. In terms of the type of books they've been, 5 have been graphic novels, 4 have been poetry collections, and the rest are a combination of normal novels, essay collections, and an audiobook. So that's it in terms of stats, and now I wanted to talk about the reading goals that I set myself at the beginning of the year. So I set myself 5 goals. Really there were 4 goals, and then one was a sort of, if I manage it, I'll be happy. If I don't, it'll be fine. So the first goal that I set myself was to read more books by African authors or books about Africa. I have read 6 books that fall into that category so far, which is kind of disappointing because I thought I would have read more, but I know exactly why I haven't. It's just because I've been picking up books as and when I want, whenever I'm feeling it, rather than, you know, purchasing a set of books that fit that sort of goal and then reading from that. But I mean, it's fine. I have plans to rectify it for the other half of this year, so I'm happy with that. The second goal was to read more essay collections. I completely flopped in that. I think I started the year strong by ordering a book that I knew was an essay collection, and I read that. I really didn't like it. And then there was another book, Between the World and Me, which I read, which was like part memoir, part essay collection, and I really enjoyed that. And since then I have not picked up anything else that is even an essay collection that would even qualify. It really just hasn't even crossed my mind, if I'm honest. But again, I have plans to rectify that. The third goal that I set myself was to read more sci-fi, so any books that fall into the genre of sci-fi, and I have read 8 books that fit into that category. I'm so proud of myself because I really don't know how that happened. 3 of those books happen to be books that are in a series, and I will be talking about 2 of those books in my July wrap-up. I've already spoken about one of them in my June wrap-up, and that book was Dark Eden. The fourth goal I set myself was to read more mythology, and I failed. I remember specifically saying in the video that it wasn't just to be like Greek mythology or Roman mythology. All I have read this year is like a middle grade version of Iliad and the Odyssey, and that's Greek mythology, so I've flopped with that one. However, there is a book that's like on my reading list, my TBR, that falls into that category, and also my first goal, so I'm going to be able to tick off that. But the mythology one is interesting, and I'll come back and talk about all my goals and like what I'm going to do after I just run through them. So the final goal was to read a fantasy book. So whilst I haven't read a book that is directly fantasy, some of the books that I have read over the course of this year fit into that. So the 2 books I noted that fall into that are Monstrous and Who Fears Death. Monstrous is a graphic novel, and I have read 2 volumes of that, and Who Fears Death is a sort of post-apocalyptic, it's sci-fi, it's fantasy, it's written by Nadia Okorafor. I can't say her name, I'm terrible. And it falls into that genre, so I feel like I've ticked off that box. I didn't enjoy Who Fears Death anyway, and I quite like Monstrous. I need to read the rest of it to see what I make of the whole entire collection, but so far I have been really enjoying it. So those were the 5 goals that I set myself, and I guess in terms of goal setting and meeting those goals, I don't feel too bad about the fact that it's, you know, sort of up and down with some of them. I think that's just the way it goes, and because I never set myself any specific targets, I am not really, you know, basing it against anything. There's no way that really I could fail per se, so I'm happy with that. But I do think I need to create a sort of TBR for the second half of this year so that I'm able to hit those goals, because looking back at those goals that I've set, I still want to do them. It's not that I have sort of looked at them and thought, oh no, I actually don't want to do that anymore. I'm still really excited about sort of reading within those categories, those genres, as I was when I set those goals. I just sort of need to make sure now that I do that. I think the issue that I have, I think everyone has who loves reading, is the fact that there are so many books, so many new releases coming out, so many books that people talk about that, you know, you just end up picking things up that maybe you weren't ever going to read, but now because it's been hyped up, you've read it. I know that was definitely the case for me with the Sally Rooney books. There are a couple of books that I'm just currently reading now that I talked about in my like sort of to DNF and not DNF, which I've either read or I still haven't got through them, and I'm just going to make a decision to DNF some of them. There's also the issue of the fact that I've obviously been book shopping, and whilst I've been book shopping, I've been trying to stick to my list of things of books that I have that I know I want. Not books that I have, books in my list that I know that I want. But then, you know, new books come in and then I just pick them up. And also because I haven't done a book haul yet on this particular set of books, and that will come probably in a couple of weeks, but I've also just had access to a whole bunch of books. I've had people reach out to me to send me books, but also the publishers that I work for, also I was able to get loads of books from like the imprints that they work for, so I'm like overwhelmed with books. I've got so many books, and obviously because I want to read a lot more sci-fi, my boyfriend has tons and tons of sci-fi books, so I've got access to so many books that I kind of feel like I'm drowning in books. But really the purpose of this video isn't for me to sit here and rant about how I've got so many books, what a horrible problem to have. The purpose of the video obviously was for me to talk through the goals and what I'm going to do with them. So on the fact of African literature thing, I have a whole bunch of books that are by African authors, authors of African descent or about Africa. So like I said before, I'm going to create a TBR, and I have a whole bunch of books that feature on that, and I'm really, really excited to get to that. So that's how I plan on sort of meeting that goal for the second half, because I feel like I've just been really shoddy with it, and it's something that I really want to do. It's something that's really important to me, so I'm going to make that sort of emphasis and make that sort of decision to actively reach that goal. In terms of the second goal, again, I'm going to set myself a TBR and, you know, find a couple of essay collections that I know I want to read, that I think I'd be interested in, purchase some of those or request them, or just, you know, see what happens and put them on the TBR as well. I guess the thing with me for essay collections, in terms of the people that I watch on BookTube, I haven't seen a lot of people talk about essay collections, so I guess I don't get my inspiration that way. And just in terms of guess what my reading tastes are, everything that is sort of guided towards me in terms of email content, the word I'm looking for is escaping me, algorithm, that's it, in terms of things that, you know, I buy and the algorithm recommends to me, they're never essay collections. So again, I don't get it that way, so I have to actively seek them out, and I guess I'm just a bit lazy in doing that. In terms of reading more sci-fi, I think I have, you know, I'm so proud of myself of how much I've hit that goal, and it has been interesting. Some books have been a bit of a for me, and some books have been like spectacular. I have a couple of sci-fi recommendations that I am going to purchase because they sound absolutely brilliant, and you will see them in my TBR. So I think with the sci-fi, I'm going to continue to do that, because although I have read 8 of them, that has only 3 of them have been in like the past 3 weeks, so it would have been 5, and you know, that would have probably evened out to like 1 a month, so it's not that spectacular. And the other one is to read mythology. So with that, again, with the mythology one, I am going to seek out a couple of books, buy them and put that on a TBR, and I would just read those and just sort of hit that goal, because I feel like with the mythology one, because I haven't really read mythology from other backgrounds, I don't know whether or not I find it good, whether I find it exciting, whether it's something that bores me. So I'm gonna just delve into it, see how I feel, and then if I get to the end of the year and I'm not happy with it, and it's something I don't ever have to put any focus on again. And finally, the final goal, which is to read fantasy. I'm gonna ditch that one, not for any other reason than I don't see the point in sort of like trying to force myself to like a genre. Probably at another point in my life, and I would say next year, I might make that into another goal, so it would be higher up on the list. I just feel like I've got now like sort of 4 genres, areas that I want to look at. Adding something in that I'm not really that interested in, it just seems silly. But I feel like I'm going to swap that one out for another goal, which is to read 1 poetry collection a month. I've sort of been doing this year, without actually realising it, and then I must have stopped because I think I just didn't have a new poetry collection to read, but I love reading poetry, so again, I just want to buy some more poetry books and have them in my reading whilst I'm reading other books as well. I think poetry is a really nice thing to break it up. You can read it, sit back, think about it, and then go back and read more. So that's what I'm going to do in terms of the goals that I've set. So keep the 4 that I have and change out the 5th one for another goal. So what I'll be doing in order to meet these goals is I will be having a to be read pile. Obviously everyone has to be read piles, but I am never very like concise or strict with my TBR piles. It is legit just pick up whatever book you like the look of on your pile and there you go. But I have started to create a TBR pile that focuses on these goals, so it focuses on books written by African authors about Africa. I know The Fisherman is on the list I have so far. I think mainly the books that I've picked so far hit the goals of African literature and sci-fi. So I'm going to try, well, I'm going to buy books that fit the poetry category, that fit the mythology category, and fit the, what's the second goal? Oh, the essay collection category. And that is it for this video really. I think I will do a follow-up video maybe just about a month after this video, just talking about my experiences so far with what I've read and, you know, reading out of, I guess, my comfort zone, genres that I usually read. But I feel like right now it's not the place for that video. I just wanted to sort of look back on those goals and sort of, I guess, yeah, set new goals, refresh those goals and see how we're actually going to meet them. But I'm interested to see what my reading habits will look like towards the end of this month, because I personally feel that my reading habits have changed since last year, and I have a lot of thoughts about certain books and the way they've made me feel, but I think I need to integrate a bit more reading from the rest of my goals before I fully make my mind up on that. But that's all from me today. I will see you in my next video. Goodbye.